Welcome into episode 240 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined as always by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins defeated the New York Islanders, who are a historically stingy team to score against, to play against. They defeat them 5-2 at the Garden. The Bruins improved to 11-1-1 on the new season. Bridget and Scott, let's get to our opening shifts.
The Bruins have the best record in the NHL. Once again, they're doing this again. The Vegas Golden Knights have 2 losses now, 2 regulation losses. So Bruins sit there all alone at 11-1-1. And it is kind of crazy. Look, obviously a huge game for Charlie Coyle with the hat trick, which we're going to get into. But it is kind of crazy because it's still, to me at least, I don't know if you guys agree, but it still doesn't feel like last year. And I don't know if that's a combination of they're not quite as dominant. They're certainly not as explosive offensively, although the 5 goals against the Islanders was a season high. Or just kind of like the attitude around the team where it's, people are still not over last year, so they're still not fully buying in. But, they're not a perfect team. There's some stuff we can kind of pick apart as we go along here. But at some point, you got to kind of just look at the record and be like, yeah, I don't know. That they're definitely one of the best teams in the league, and they may very well be a contender once again. And, the schedule's gotten tougher and they've kept winning. Can't ignore 11-1-1.
No, but I do disagree with you on one point there, so we'll get to that later after our opening shifts. But so mine is that they're getting, it seems like they're on the path to getting healthier and maybe getting a few guys back. Obviously, we know Charlie McAvoy coming back next game after finishing out his 4th game of his suspension. So he'll be back in the lineup, which is huge. When talking about can the defense hold up without him. Forbert came back last night, and we don't know whether or not he's actually going to stay in the lineup because he did not practice today. But he was in last night's game, played the whole game. We didn't see him leave with an injury. He did take a few shots, he blocked a few shots that I saw him come up a little bit slow. And I was kind of at the time in the back of my head, oh, that might be something that re-injures something. So he's not practicing today, but he was back in the lineup. And for the first time in a long time, Grzelcyk and Lucic skated before yesterday's practice. So they're getting back in the swing of things, practicing. And Jacob Lacko actually he's the closest. He had taken warm-ups before the game yesterday, though I don't think he was a game time decision. I think that they just wanted him to take warm-ups before the Bruins game. So he was out on the ice wearing a neck guard and a full cage, but he looks like he's non-contact now and ready to go in the next few games, maybe for him. So mine basically just about kind of the injuries, and there was one person added to the list, and that was Morgan Geekie, who was put on not long-term, but just he was put on IR. So he is out of the lineup, and that's kind of explains the need for different lines in yesterday's game.
My biggest takeaway is that you have to keep Charlie Coyle together with James Van Riemsdyk and Trent Frederick. Every time they've been together this year, the 3 of them they've been outstanding. I mean, they're all big bodies. They all possess the puck. And most importantly, they all seem to have chemistry with one another. Scott's mentioned it in the past that Coyle and Frederick just work together. It just does. They seem to be good friends off the ice as well. I noticed on a Behind the B episode after Trent Frederick fought in Los Angeles, in the locker room afterwards, Coyle came over to him and said, "Thank you." So in that, famous mic'd up moment where Frederick's like, "You want it, you go with me." I think that the guy from LA was trying to drop the gloves with Coyle or get in Coyle's kitchen. So there's just a friendship between those 2 guys and chemistry. And obviously Charlie Coyle scores his first career hat trick last night, gets 4 points in the game, 3 goals and an assist, gets him to 12 points in 13 games in the season, which is, a clip that would continue to be his best point production in the NHL in a given season. And yeah, that's my takeaway. Those 3, you call them whatever line you want. I don't care. Label them however you want, but those three need to stay together.
And Scott, his point production now is not on pace for 69 points. So
No,
sorry, he ruined that for you when he scored the hat trick because Scott with his tweet.
Coyle, hey, I just tweet facts, Bridget. That's all I do.
Yeah, well, I noticed he didn't
keep,
update the new pace after
just trying
he
to
scored.
keep the people informed. I had in my column this morning his new pace. So
no, you did. Oh, okay. I was gonna say you put the number 69 in your column today.
No, the new pace 76. Yeah, it's incredible. Coyle was already he had 8 points through the first 12 games, which I think was kind of almost quietly happening. He was tied for second on the team in assists even before Thursday night, and was on a 55-point pace, which is his career high is 56. 55 would be the most he's ever had in Boston. So it was already a pretty good offensive start for him. Then obviously 3 goals and an assist really kicks it up a notch. And, you know, I asked Montgomery after the game, you know, did you kind of see Coyle playing better offensively even before this? And his answer was a little cautious because he was like, in flashes, yes, but I thought he was playing a little slower than last year. And I talked to him about that, and he said Thursday night was his most complete game, even outside of the 3 goals, obviously. But yeah, he's been really good this year, and obviously he's still getting the tough defensive assignments. He's their top penalty killing forward in terms of shorthanded minutes. And Brian, you're right about that line. Like I know sometimes stuff happening on other lines, Montgomery feels the need to change it. Like he thought he needed to put Frederick with Patra because a couple opponents in a row kind of took some runs at Patra. But yeah, it does work so well. Like it's really hard to change that. And you know, to put some numbers on it, Coyle, JVR, Frederick, they've played 56 minutes together at 5-on-5 now, and Bruins have outscored opponents 4-1 and outshot opponents 35-25. The only line comparable in terms of production has been Marchand, Zacha, and Pastrnak, which is also at a 4-1 margin in goals. But Van Riemsdyk, Coyle, Frederick has been even more dominant in terms of possession and chances. Like that, all things considered, that's probably been their best combination this year. That's gotten more than 5 or 10 minutes together. That's actually gotten a couple games together. That's probably been their best combination so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly you have 2 lines that work right now. You have the one we're talking about, and you have Zacha, Marchand, and Pastrnak. So the fourth line is tough to assess based on Lucic being down for, let's call it the majority of the season so far. And Lauko goes down in Chicago. So the fourth line's been kind of a, mixed bag of sorts with Oscar Steen and Beecher and whatever, you name it. But yeah, that line just works. Coyle, Frederick, and Van Riemsdyk. It works. Don't go away from it. Allow them to keep building. And that first line of Pastrnak, Zacha, and Marchand, that works too, right? You can sit there all you want and say, we don't want Pastrnak and Marchand on the same line because you want to have balance and depth. Well, they don't have that luxury right now to kind of split up everybody. That, like, you have that line of JVR, Coyle, and Frederick. That works. Leave it alone. Okay. Marchand and Pastrnak and JVR, what's his name? Zacha. They kind of give you that perfection line without Bergeron, with Zacha in there. You got to figure out what DeBruska's doing. And DeBruska's game hasn't been where it needs to be from a point production standpoint. Patra's still figuring out the NHL level. Who do you put with them? Heinen, Geeky if he's healthy? I don't know. We all know the Bruins are a top 6 forward short. When you mention off the top, Scott, like maybe they are just a contender, right? But they're forward short, and that makes sense when you look at those top 3 lines. So knowing that, all right, figure out DeBrusk and Patra, and then just let those other 2 lines just keep going.
Yeah, and I did think that line with DeBrus, Poitras, and Heinen had a few good shifts, especially early in the game. They had a lot of energy. They were getting things going. It kind of made me think, like, do you ever feel like sometimes there's just an extra guy on the roster you don't know what to do with, and it kind of screws up the entire like line, like all the lines, and it's kind of like they're. I almost feel like Heinen worked well enough with DeBrusque and Poitras that you got a different look at that line and what it could be, because Heinen is he's very quick and he's good at getting pucks back, and he's pretty good at stealing pucks as well. And he's been a pretty decent setup guy in terms of starting offense and setting up goals, but I feel like he was a better fit for the other two than Geekie has been this season. So it's interesting that Geekie comes out and you look at this line as a necessity, like him having to fill that role as a necessity because Geekie's gone. But I didn't think there was anything that Heinen was doing to bring that line down. In fact, I thought it looked better than when they had Geekie on it earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Poitras and Geekie early on had really good chemistry together. So, I don't want to say, like, I'm certainly not going to say that like Geekie was dragging anything down. Like, I thought he was actually helping Poitras quite a bit early on with his forechecking and his work around the net. But then I think Geekie had kind of gone quiet a little bit, and now obviously is out with the injury. So it does open up an opportunity for Heinen, who was the most natural option out of their, say like the fourth line rotation. He was the most obvious one to get bumped up first, and does look like he continues to get more and more up to speed. Still a couple times I feel like there was at least one play yesterday where he held on to a puck a little too long and wasn't really moving his feet and got it taken away. And you still see that happen a couple times. So, something to clean up, but you're right. Like he is helping to make plays. And I thought that was a good line Thursday night. And most importantly, Jim Montgomery thought it was a good line. He said he thought it was their all around best offensive performance this season. And he actually liked all of the lines, which is a borderline miracle for Jim Montgomery to like all four lines at once.
Not just like mix them up 100 times.
Right. So suggest that we might actually see them kept together, although also worth noting, and we might have an update by the time we're done recording, but Pavel Zacha was not on the ice for Friday's practice either. Remains to be seen if that's, just a maintenance day or something more concerning. Like Forbort, he finished the game. It looked like he took all his regular shifts, so we'll just have to wait word on that.
And to kind of like add a little bit to what I was saying about that line with DeBrusque and Heinen with Poitras, if you look back at the lineup when Geekie was in with Poitras, he's always on the right side, and they usually had Frederick on the left side. They didn't really have space for DeBrusque on a line because, like, I know DeBrusque play either side, but he's been better on the right side. Well, that's where Geekie plays. And so you kind of really couldn't get both of those guys on the same line with Poitras, but you really want DeBrusque with Poitras. So it kind of was, you couldn't really have all three together because you'd rather use DeBrusque on the right. So with Heinen on that line, you don't have to worry about that because he's playing on the left side.
Yeah. Are there any other takeaways from you guys regarding Coyle, that line? I mean, before we transition to your guys' opening shifts, just because, like, I guess my ultimate takeaway is there's been so much chatter going into the season, right? And ourselves included, like, is Coyle a number 2 center or a top 2 center? Like, what line, whatever line he's on, what's it? My takeaway is it doesn't matter. I don't care what you call that line of JVR, Coyle, and Frederick. That's the line that he plays best on. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what matters most, right? Optimizing each skater's skill set and putting him in a position to succeed. And if that's what JVR and Frederick and they all gel, that's all that matters. That if that's the best version of Charlie Coyle that you can get, then you stick with that line. That's my ultimate takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's like we've mentioned this a couple times, but when they load up that top line and Marchand and Pastrnak together, it's really, you have a clear first line, and then you have your clear fourth line, and then it's just a middle six. Like, you're right. It doesn't matter if Coyle's line gets called the second line or Poitras' line does. Like, the ice time for those two lines has been fairly similar for the most part. There's been games where Poitras gets a little more ice. Poitras and DeBrus get a little more ice time. Games where Coyle's line gets leaned on more. Some of that could even be matchup game situations. You're probably trusting Coyle more when you have the lead and you're trying to hold on in the third period. Poitras might give you more of an offensive spark if you're trailing, which the Bruins never are, so we haven't really seen that. I think Kevin Paul Dupont's been tracking like lead time this season, and it's like 12-1 in favor of the Bruins. They just, obviously, as you might expect with their record, like, they're just not trailing in games hardly ever. But yeah, it just, to make sure we highlight them while we're talking about this line, like, James Van Riemsdyk's been awesome and was again Thursday night. And, two nice plays to set up 2 goals and set up at least, I'd say, like 3 other grade A chances. And we know his goal scoring's there. We know he can finish in close, and we've seen that. But even just like his touch down low to be able to set other guys up. I mean, the pass over to Coyle for Coyle's second goal, it ends up being like a fairly clear lane, and Coyle makes the right drive, but Van Riemsdyk has the patience to see that developing and hold on and turn what could have been like a rushed play into an easy play. The quick pass out to, or now I'm blanking what his other assist was, but yeah, he's just been really good, and certainly seems to have chemistry with those two, but just his work down low in general continues to be exceptional. And I know Milan Lucic was up in the NESN booth for the second period, and they were talking about JVR a little, and Lucic like brings a stat ready to go, like like an actual professional analyst, and he's like, yeah, I was looking at tipped shots over, deflection goals over the last however many years, and JVR was top 5, and this is why the Bruins got him. Like, this was a point of emphasis, was getting grittier goals, getting down to the net, and they have, and he's been a big part of that. Like, they're near the top of the league in high danger chances and high danger goals, despite not being a great possession team or taking like a ton of shots. They've really been a quality over quantity team when it comes to shot selection.
I thought that Van Riemsdyk maybe had his best game of the season, and it comes without him scoring, but he had such great offensive play with his passing. And I think, was it you who asked coach? Someone asked coach about him last night, and he was like, "Are you pleasantly surprised with how good of a passer he is?" And he was like, "I'm pleasantly surprised with everything that we've gotten out of Van Riemsdyk." I mean, he's big. He takes up space in front of the net. And even on a lot of goals where he doesn't have an assist, kind of needs one, he's just been completely blocking the goalie's view and just like causing havoc out in front, making life much harder for the goalie. So today we saw a little bit different side of his game, that if he can do that on a consistent basis, then you can really see that line is a third line that can produce, because he can score net front, but he can also be patient with the puck and dish it off too. And I think that line really gels, because I think they all kind of immediately, we already knew that Coyle and Frederick were pretty close, but I kind of get the sense that Van Riemsdyk also really has kind of taken to those two and has formed a relationship with them. I know him and Coyle both played in Hockey East, and they've both been around New England, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it, but I think that they get along as well, like just as friends, and then on the ice they've looked good too.
So Scott, going back to your opening shift, you mentioned how the Bruins are atop the standings, but it looks different. It feels different this year, and you're right. So last year, and anybody with a pair of eyes knows that the offense looks different this year so far, right? But just numbers to back that up. In their first 11 games last year, seven times the Bruins scored at least 5 goals in a game. It took them till their 13th game this year to score 5 goals in a game, as you mentioned, right? So that's why optically things look different. Yeah, there's some different personnel too, and yeah, the uniforms look different, and it's the 100th season, and like there's reasons why this looks different, right? But that's the biggest thing. The offense is clearly not what it was this time last year or at all last year. But the question is, right? Like last year, the Bruins fell to a team in Florida that, in my opinion, didn't have a whole lot of offense outside of a couple of players. So defense and goaltending is the most important thing. Have we learned that maybe being a top 5, top 10 offense is a little bit maybe overrated if you have the goaltending and defense the Bruins do, or do you still think they need to be a top 10 scoring team?
So I will answer that in 1 second, but just to update since we mentioned it, Jim Montgomery just told reporters while we're recording, Zacha and Forbert, both maintenance days, as we suspected. So both will play Saturday, and Jacob Lauko also an option to play Saturday. So sounds like he's very close. I do think they still have to get better offensively, and certainly Thursday night was a step towards that, scoring 5. I just think, look, if they're going to get the goaltending and defense they are, then you don't have to be elite offensively. But I do think you want to be like into the top 10, at least around that neighborhood, rather than middle of the pack or lower. And I think they're 14th now after Thursday night. A couple games ago, they were 17th, I think. So they're already, moving up a little just with a couple higher scoring games here recently. But yeah, it's, I think like when you compare this team and this offense to last year, in some ways, I feel like not us, but like some people have sort of had like the wrong takeaway from last year, which is like, oh, well, they could play that way and score like that in the regular season, but that doesn't work in the playoffs. And it's like, well, offense wasn't the problem against Florida. Like they scored enough to win that series, no question. They just gave up too much, and part of that was they were sort of playing fast and loose a little bit, and they weren't tight and they weren't clean. And I think that just the style they're playing this year is forcing them to like really bear down more, especially with Montgomery's emphasis on net front play at both ends. And you're seeing that pay off where like there are games that are getting outpossessed and outshot and outchanced, but those high danger chances stay strong. Right now, so the NHL has these edge stats now, which are like kind of more advanced stats taken from puck, like tracking data. Right now, the Bruins are on the 99th percentile in high danger shots. Like they're, even if they don't have great possession, they're getting those chances, and they're not giving up a lot of high danger chances. And when they do, they have 2 goalies who are extremely good at making high danger saves. So it's like they've put this emphasis on winning in those areas, and they are. And that goes so far towards winning games and so far towards playing a way that wins in the playoffs. So, yeah, it does look different because they're not as high flying. It's not as wide open. But I think them playing this way, I think you could really see it benefit them come the playoffs. I would just also know, like, it's a harder way to play for 82 games. They're off to a great start, which gives them a huge cushion, but like just like they're going to grind down opponents playing like this, at some point they might also grind themselves down, and you might see, a blip at some point where they have a bit of a skid because it's hard to play this way and be this detailed for 6 months straight.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the net front play being an emphasis. Think about who they have on both ends of the ice net front. We've already talked about Van Riemsdyk being one of the best in the league net front on the offensive side, and then I would say Coyle, Carlo is really an elite defensive net front guy, where he's clearing guys out and pucks out of there better than most guys in the league can. And at times, Forbert as well can be pretty elite in that spot as a big body, clearing pucks out and blocking shots there. And even I would say Lindholm is pretty good at that as well. But Carlo being elite, in my opinion, in front of the net. So that's going to stop the high danger chances from that close in, which is usually how something gets labeled a high danger chance, is how close it is, how high percentage of shot it is. So that makes sense. In terms of offensive production, I know we just talked about how good the third line is, and I think they'll produce a lot, but I think it's an outlier that they're going to have 4 goals in a given night. Like, that's not something that's going to keep happening. Maybe they'll get 2, maybe they'll get 1, but a hat trick for someone, that leads to their first 5-goal game, and one of the goals is an empty netter. Like, that's great, and the offense definitely looked better. But in terms of actually putting up 5 goals, I think that this kind of is an outlier where you got 4 from one line, and whether you call it the second or the third line, I guess it doesn't matter. But don't think that's going to happen super often.
No, but I guess what I'm coming around to is last year was so fun to watch. It's easy to look back and be like, well, the Bruins prioritized goal scoring over defense last year. But, not only did the Bruins have the highest scoring offense in the league, they also had, like, I think the best goals against in the league last year too. So they were doing both, right? But when they got to the postseason against Florida, the difference in regular season hockey versus playoff hockey showed itself, and you have a team game planning against you for 7 games. And while Scott's right, the Bruins scored enough to win that series, it did become a run and gun show against Florida, and they ended up sacrificing their identity to do so. I mean, that game 6 down in Sunrise, I did not recognize that Bruins team at all. So ultimately, if they go through stretches this year where they lose some games and they get tired because of the way that they're playing stingy defense because they have to, because the offense isn't good enough to allow them to get away with bad defense, and it costs them some points in the standings, but they know how to play those tight games better in the playoffs, then I'm all for it. Last regular season was a blast to watch, but guess what? The spring ended 2 months too early. So if they're playing a different style this year, because they have to, because the offense isn't as potent, I think that could benefit them. So yeah, it looks much.
And it's more realistic. That's how more of the league has to play. Like, you don't normally have an offense that can put up 5 goals a night. Like, you're hoping that they can outscore opponents, and you're hoping you get good goaltending. But a lot of the wins are 3-1, 3-2. They're not 5-1. Like, you can get by with that.
Yeah, and Bridget, good point highlighting Carlo too, because I know we've talked about him. We've said we think he's basically playing the best hockey of his career, just about. I think there's been times in the past where everyone's wanted Carlo to be like that strong guy around the net in the D zone, and sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It does really seem like he's embraced that and like taking that to heart, that he's always been good with his stick. He's always been good positioning, but like now you actually see, not toughness in terms of like taking guys down, hammering guys left and right, but establishing body position and being strong and moving guys out of there, tying up sticks, not letting himself get pushed around. Like, I do think you've seen a difference in him really kind of embracing this new, or not new, but like adjusted mindset and approach to really, emphasizing that part of the game.
Yeah, agreed. He's been great. And he's needed to be. It's that time for him. You know, you're entering the prime of your career. You're a leader, and you're a veteran at this point. So, Bridget, did you want to have any follow up on your opening take as far as the Bruins getting healthier
Um,
and getting
I
bodies back?
well, I think just I don't know if I missed anything because I was trying to go through it quickly, but obviously getting McAvoy back is huge, and that wasn't a health thing. That was just a being done with a suspension thing. But I don't know, Scott. Thank you for clarifying that those were both maintenance days for Forward and Zaka. So that means like even more so to my point, they're going to be healthy or they're going to be healthier coming up soon. So potential for Lauko to play, which, that one's not the biggest difference because I think Steen has actually been playing pretty well in there, but Lauko's a better option than Brown. So, there's an upgrade there for you if he's ready to play. And it's been a long time since Lucci skated. So, I mean, that's a pretty big deal too. So, it's looking up. And not that the Bruins haven't been able to kind of cover those holes, but it's still like you question if the offense could take a next step. And some of those guys that I mentioned coming back are guys that could help the offense out too. So if you're reaching a new level, which it kind of seems like they're finding a new gear, that could just help even more.
Yeah, and Lucci just eligible to come off long-term IR November 18th, so a little over a week. We'll see if he's ready by then. Obviously, he's been on the ice now. Next step is obviously practice with the team. Maybe he starts in no contact, or maybe he's ready for full contact right away. We'll see, but yeah, he could be back in a little over a week, and then Grizzlies after Thanksgiving, if we met as we mentioned. But yeah, I mean, Lauko can certainly help because I do think he brings more to the table than Patrick Brown, who we saw get back into the lineup on Thursday with Geeky out, and I actually thought Brown played pretty well. I know I've kind of adopted the Twitter persona as Patrick Brown's number one defender, but I did think him in that line played well Thursday. But Lauko brings certainly more speed, and I think even a little more physicality, and can just kind of push defenses back more. On defense, I'm going to be really interested. I don't know if like they didn't do like regular line drills today, but I know me and Fluto are usually the ones who tweet out the lines, and I'm not there because we have this. And Fluto didn't tweet out line combos from Friday's practice, so maybe they just weren't really doing 5-on-5 work. But I'll be interested to see if it's what the D pairings are and if it's Lohrei with McAvoy, which I suspect that's what it's going to be because I think Montgomery likes that Lindholm-Carlo pairing. And then forward Shattenkirk makes sense as a third pairing. And I think I want to see Lohrei stay in and Mitchell can be the extra defenseman. Parker Wotherspoon already got sent back down to Providence. So that would be really fascinating to me if we get to see that, if we get to see Lohrei and McAvoy get at least a game together and possibly more than that.
Scott, you jumped the gun for who's up, who's down.
Oh yeah,
which we should go to now because we don't have a lot
sure.
of time. I have a broadcast later, but let's get to it. Scott, you hit us with a down first. Wotherspoon is physically sent down because McAvoy is coming back and Forbert's already back. So that's that was like the only one down we could think of because we had a lot of ups, but we haven't had many cases that you can make for players that are solidly down.
Sorry for my silence. I knew that going into this segment, so I was trying to see, I was trying to tally up the Montreal Canadiens because they're playing the Bruins on Saturday, and that rivalry has just kind of gone to shit. Montreal hasn't beaten Boston since 2019, and I was trying, and I'm going back to their head-to-heads. I'm back in 2018, and let me just scroll up real quick. You got one Canadians win. You got two Canadians wins. Three. The Canadians have beaten the Bruins 3 times since 2018, and they've probably played like maybe 12 games or so. So I guess is the Bruins Canadians rivalry down? Is that a down this week for us?
Yeah, for sure. We can throw that in there. Hopefully
I'm scratching and clawing here.
Hopefully starts
Yeah,
to take
you
a
can
swing
see
up
it.
though. Like that. I mean, this Canadians team so far is competent, which is a change from recent years where they've been downright terrible. I think they're what, like 6-5-2 or something. Yeah, 6-5-2, and they've been a pretty good 5-5 team. Sean Monahan is roaring back to life, and after seemingly like just having his career go completely down the toilet, he's been very good this season. So um, maybe there's at least some hope there that like things can get interesting again between these two teams. But yeah, the rivalry has been down for a while now, unfortunately.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, so I was
And
trying to think of.
we're not going this time. Maybe we're talking about maybe going in March, but we're not taking the trip up to Montreal. I always try to convince Scott to go with me. He didn't go last year.
Well,
No.
I couldn't go last year, and
Yeah.
I probably could have made this one work, but it would have been tough. I would have had to rearrange some things, and it wasn't really worth it. But anyways,
We're gonna go share a beer tower at some point in March. So
yes.
okay.
I was trying to think of other downs though, and
real quick, sorry, Scott. Scott, real quick. 11-game win streak for the Bruins over Montreal.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad for Montreal.
And I don't really think he's a down because I think he's continued to play pretty well, but Jake DeBrusk, finally got off the schneid with 1 goal a few games back, and now still remains stuck on 1 goal. Hasn't had a point the last 2 games, but like I said, like this feels like reaching, kind of grasping at straws for another down because I don't think he's playing bad hockey. I think Jake DeBrusk is playing just fine. But you do still. Everyone kind of hoped that first goal was going to like open the floodgates, and it hasn't really done that yet. So more work required there for him to, at some point, actually catch fire and start having 2, 3, 4 goals go in.
Yeah, and that brings us to the ups because I don't think we had any more downs. I'm gonna take the easy one, Charlie Coyle. Charlie Coyle with the hat trick, obviously up. And that line as a whole, Brian, you mentioned you could put pretty much anyone on that line on the up. But specifically Charlie Coyle in that he does a lot of the other things right defensively and small details, but you don't see him score as much. And it was fun to see him actually be able to be the guy that's getting the setup pass and finishing rather than being the setup guy. And even on his empty net goals, he was trying to set up Pasternak and then Pasternak sent it right back over. So it was kind of nice to see everybody so happy for him for completing the hat trick. And also seems like that could be an option for them. They seem to, so I noticed this a few times. They put Coyle out there before the rest of his line mates to start shifts, like with another line because he's so good at the face-off dot. So he'll win a face-off, stay out there for a little bit with a different line, and then his line mates will jump on the ice. And also I noticed them do that on the power play. I think it was the goal he scored. He wins the face-off, goes into the bumper, and scores in the bumper, and that they used him in the bumper on the power play more than they normally do. He was in there with the first unit at the end of the game after him having such a good game. He was in there with the first unit in the bumper. Him and Zaka were both kind of rotating in there. And maybe those are different ways you can use him throughout the season because you're seeing his effectiveness, at least in this last game, you're seeing his effectiveness there at the dot, and which helps with your possession on the power play, obviously, but also him finding space in the bumper. So maybe they use him there a little bit more. So he's my up.
Yeah, that's a bumper play you see a lot of teams use over the years. You just haven't really seen Boston do it. That quick, like premeditated goal line bump back out to the goal line. You've seen the Bruins go to the bumper from the half wall a lot, but not the way they did it last night. You've seen it done, but maybe I'm just wrong. But I feel like I haven't seen the Bruins do that set play all too often. But yeah, it looked good. Another guy involved in that set play was Pavel Zacha. He's an up for me. 9 points in 13 games. You know, the first handful of games this year, he was production-wise a little bit snake-bitten, was playing well, but just didn't have the numbers to back up his role as a top 2 center. And let's call it what it is, a top center on this team right now. So, you know, his point production starting to be rewarded or reward his play, and five points in his last 5 games. So he's slowly but surely really starting to, you know, the points are starting to get there for him.
My up's going to be Kevin Shattenkirk, who I think has had a really strong stretch of games here recently, and especially stepped up with McAvoy out. He had 3 straight games playing over 20 minutes. He was at about 18 and a half Thursday night. Has been quarterback in that top power play unit, and I don't know if this is going to become a discussion. I kind of get the sense maybe not yet, but the power play looked the best it's looked all season with him running that top unit. You know, they've had a stretch with McAvoy out over these 4 games, 4 for 13, over 30%. He picked up an assist on Pasternak's goal Thursday night. That set play you were talking about that ends up with Coyle starts with Shattenkirk walking the blue line and kind of dragging one of the forwards over to them, and that sort of helped open up that lane for Pasternak to then get it down low. I think he's done a really good job there, and I think he's just done a really good job in general. And, you know, I don't think there's going to yet be like a serious conversation about should he be there even after McAvoy returns. I'm pretty sure the Bruins are going to go right back to McAvoy there, but I think we saw some things during the stretch that, you know, if the power play goes quiet again with McAvoy running it, like Shattenkirk did a pretty good job, and that could be an option for them.
At the very least, he's at least been on the second unit for pretty much the entirety of the season. He's been getting power play time. Just now he gets bumped up because McAvoy missing the 4 games. But that also changes Lohrei too, because Lohrei got a little bit of time on the power play in the few games he's been here on the second unit. So that probably takes him off. And it's taken Lindholm off a little bit. Sometimes he's out there for a very short amount of time with the second unit. But yeah, I mean, Shattenkirk has done well on the power play. I would say that's been one of his strengths. I've seen some defensive miscues for sure, but on the offensive zone, he's very good.
Yeah, he's been everything that you kind of hoped he could be for this team, and he's been subbing in for McAvoy. Great, power play's been getting clicking here, and so he's definitely a good choice, Scott. We have a hard out here. So, do either of you have anything to say before we go?
A non-Bruin stop, but the San Jose Sharks beat the Edmonton Oilers last night. Oilers,
oh boy,
continue to just hit new lows, and the Sharks have now won 2 games. So, you know, look out, someone break up the Sharks. But
did you see the meme that they tweeted? I felt like it was borderline unprofessional.
I think you might have gotten tricked by a fake account, but go on.
Okay, maybe it was like, you know, maybe it was a fake account, but I just saw like it was like looking in the meme folder, lost meme, win meme. Like they took out the win meme. It was like 10 losses around it and then a win.
I didn't see that one. That might have been real. I saw a bunch of people retweeting. It was like the Mean Girls car scene, but everyone had like shark heads, and it said like "Get in, losers, we're going on a winning streak." But that was a fake San Jose Sharks account.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it real quick.
Tough times in Edmonton. Bridget, while you're looking for that, yeah. So as we mentioned, we got original 6 matchup Saturday. Bruins Canadians. Canadians are looking for just their 4th win over the Bruins since 2016. Yikes, that's tough. Hate to look, Scott. Any chance you have to kind of bash Montreal? You're gonna go for it now?
I didn't even think about this, but like I wore my Expos hat today. People watching, somehow not even like making the connection that they're going up to Montreal, but yeah, I don't, like I said, it's hockey's better and Bruins hockey is more enjoyable when there's an actual rivalry with the Canadians. So I hope we can at least like take a step towards that this year. Like I said, the Canadians are playing decent hockey. I don't think they're ready to be a playoff team yet, but Marty St. Louis at least has them, I think, playing the right way.
Yeah. All right, Bridget, you did you find it?
Mean Girls one. I found the Mean Girls one, but they post a lot. They post a lot of tweets. I'm like not even back a day yet. I'm just gonna give up.
All right, well, that's probably for the best because you have to go prepare for your broadcast this weekend.
Yes.
So that'll do it. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you very soon. Hey guys, thanks for watching this Skate podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.